Students, this is Mr. Everton, and I'm really sorry, but I couldn't be there today, and I'm not going to be there on Tuesday or Thursday either. So I want you to make sure that you know that you have a test on Thursday and Friday, Thursday or Friday. You know, some kids somewhere in the classroom just went, Mr. Everton, we only see you on Thursday, or whatever. You have 25 multiple choice questions, and you have a DBQ. So today I'm going to do a lecture on the end of the Cold War, and then you have a reading to annotate. And then tomorrow's class, for Tuesday or Wednesday, depending, I will have a review lecture where I go over the whole unit, and then you can practice outlining a DBQ and take some practice multiple choice questions on AP Classroom. That's what the week will look like. I'm really sorry that I couldn't be there in person. So the point of this lecture is to end the Cold War. And we're not actually talking about two perspectives, we're talking about one perspective because I edited this lecture and forgot to edit my learning target. We're going to be doing the perspective of, we'll talk about the traditional narrative of the end of the Cold War, but then the reading will be about the Cold War through Islamic lens. So this is Mikhail Gorbachev. And he was the final final Soviet leader for the Soviet Union, which ended in 1991. So Gorbachev inherited a job that was, pretty thankless. The Soviet Union had been weakened over the previous 20 years. The economy was not doing that well. And so he came into office as the leader of the Soviet Communist Party and started trying to fix things. And he had two big reforms that most people talk about as contributors to the fall of the Soviet Union. First off, Gorbachev was no longer interested in trying to control people and censor people and scare people the way that many of his Soviet predecessors had. So he has this policy called glasnost, which means openness. So starting to allow people to be more outspoken, critical of the government, letting them do transgressive art like this mural that you see of the Soviet leader Brezhnev and the East German leader making out, which is hilarious. And, like in the old Soviet Union, you could not have gotten away with doing that, but under glasnost, you can. And then the other reform that he puts in place is called perestroika, which means restructuring. And so this is stepping back from communism and starting to end the total government control of the economy and starting to allow for some private property and some capitalism to take place in the Soviet Union. And the thing is that both of these policies really showed the Soviet people that he sort of gave them an inch and then they were like, ooh, we would like a mile now, please. Meanwhile, there are anti-communist movements that are brewing across East Asia. These are Soviet satellite states like Poland, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, and they had all been strictly controlled by the Soviet Union. But then, as the Soviet Union starts to try to reform and become a little bit more liberalized, you start to see anti-communist movements like Solidarity in Poland and the Czechoslovakian leader Václav Havel start to not only criticize communism, but to actively work to undo it. And dictators like in Romania, Ceausescu is killed. And in 1989, this all comes to a head when the Berlin Wall is taken down. The Berlin Wall was built across the center of Berlin, dividing East and West Berlin, and it was the symbol of the Cold War. And in 1989, Germany was reunified and the wall was torn down. And then 2 years later, the Soviet Union falls apart and the Soviet Union ceases to exist, and the Russian Empire ceases to exist. And so all of these Soviets that had been part of the Russian Empire, places like Latvia and Estonia, the Baltic states, and then places with Islamic populations in Central Asia, like Turkestan. I'm getting out over my skis here, but they all leave the Soviet Union and Russia becomes just Russia, and this is the end of the Cold War. And a lot of people in America were like, we won. This is the end of history. There's no more, there's nothing else that's going to ever happen. Like the battle between democracy and communism has ended with an American victory. Yay, us. Okay, so a different perspective from that, though, is the Islamic perspective presented by Tamim Ansari. And I just gave you a reading from this book when we did Israel-Palestine. And I was going to try to come up with something else, but I really like this perspective. I really enjoy it. I think it's really smart and it's really well written. So he's going to describe the end of the Cold War, but he's going to talk about it more in terms of an Islamic understanding of the end of the Cold War. So from an American perspective, it's like, we won, the war is over, and now America will dominate the world for the foreseeable future. And from an Islamic perspective, it's very different. So I want you to, I want to go over some vocabulary to help you know what he's talking about. Ansari is going to talk about two groups that you need to know, two different kinds of modernists. There's secular modernists like Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and then there's Islamist modernists like Syed Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, which I'm sure his name is covered up by my face. Sorry about that. And the question here is really like, when you modernize your country, are you going to abandon Islam, or are you going to keep it as the center of your culture? Are you going to like do what a lot of people in the United States do, where like if they're, you know, religious, that's like their personal business, but it's not like an official state religion? Or are you going to maintain Islam as a political entity that is the center of your government? So, you know, you can see Ataturk on the left, who was the first leader of modern Turkey, was very westernized. You can see, I mean, it's like such a basic thing to look, but look at his clothes. He's wearing a tuxedo. He looks like he could be European. And then al-Afghani on the right is completely against that and is wearing traditional Islamic clothing, and he sees no need to change that. So Ansari is also going to talk about these two challenges to the superpowers that were put in place by Muslims. So on the U.S. side, the U.S. superpower is challenged by Iran in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution, in which a U.S.-backed leader was overthrown and replaced by a Muslim government. And then on the Soviet side of things, that superpower is challenged by Afghanistan, who, you know, the Soviet Union tried to overthrow the government of Afghanistan and make it a communist state. And Muslim insurgents fought a guerrilla war, very much like what happened to the United States in the Vietnam War. And, you know, over 10 years, bled the Soviet Union dry. So you're going to annotate Ansari's argument. You're going to highlight his main argument where you find it. You're going to circle evidence that he uses to support that argument. And anytime you see him addressing continuity or change over time, you're going to underline that and mark it in the margins, continuity, CCOT, C-C-O-T. And then after you've read the article, write the author's thesis in your own words. I mean, that's all very familiar. We've done this before. I'm sure that you can handle that. And there's a printout of the reading that the sub should have for you, but if for some reason that goes wrong, there is a PDF file located on Canvas. So good luck, and I will have another video for you to watch tomorrow.